All right, let's talk about Elon Musk. But we're going to get past the headlines and the rockets to really dig into his mindset. We're going to try and understand the core principles that really make him tick. His unique take on risk, his relationship with failure, and the powerful sense of purpose that fuels his most insane goals.
So, imagine this. You're about to risk every penny you have to start a rocket company. And what's the advice you get from a good friend? Well, he sits you down and makes you watch a highlight reel of rockets exploding. Seriously, that's a true story. His friend was trying to show him he was nuts. But for us, that right there is the perfect place to start.
So here's the game plan for breaking down his mindset. First, we'll look at how he dealt with advice, or criticism really, from his own heroes. Then, we'll get into his whole philosophy that failure is an option. After that, the impossible choice he faced as a founder, the real purpose that keeps him going, and finally, the incredible price you have to pay for that kind of progress.
First up, what happens when the very people you admire most are the ones telling you you're completely and utterly wrong?
Yeah, this wasn't just friends showing him explosion videos. We're talking about American legends. Neil Armstrong and Gene Cernan, the first and last men to walk on the moon. These were the guys who inspired him to even dream about space. And they literally went before Congress to testify against the kind of commercial spaceflight he was trying to build.
And you can just feel how much that stung him. He said it was really tough. Think about it, seeing your own heroes actively trying to shut down your dream. This wasn't just some business disagreement, this was personal.
So this brings up the million-dollar question, doesn't it? When the experts, your friends, and even your own idols are all saying, "Stop, you're crazy," where on earth do you find the will to keep going?
And his answer is pretty interesting. He says it's not about being fearless. Not at all. In fact, he says he feels fear quite strongly. The secret for him is believing that some things are just so important, you have to do them anyway, in spite of the fear.
And that whole idea of acting despite your fear, well, it leads us perfectly into our next point. This mindset where failure isn't just a possibility, it's pretty much a built-in part of the process.
Okay, so this philosophy got put to the test right away at SpaceX. The first launch, it failed. The second launch also failed. And the third launch, you guessed it, failed. At that point, the company had just enough money and parts for one last shot. If that fourth one didn't work, SpaceX was completely done.
So you can imagine, facing total ruin after 3 straight explosions, someone asked him this very direct question. It's what anyone would wonder, right? Did you ever think, okay, maybe it's time to just pack this in?
His answer? It was immediate. There was no hesitation. Just one single powerful word.
And just in case anyone missed the point, he followed it up with this. It's not just a strategy for him, it's a fundamental part of who he is. And that conviction is everything.
This really boils down his whole philosophy into what we can basically call the Musk doctrine. It's the reason he started Tesla in the first place. He said many times he honestly thought Tesla would most likely fail, but he believed that pushing the world towards sustainable energy was just too important not to try.
So, this doctrine of trying against all odds, well, it was about to face the ultimate test during the 2008 financial crisis, which forced him to make one of the hardest decisions of his entire life.
The situation was beyond dire. Both SpaceX and Tesla were hemorrhaging money. Musk was down to his last $30 or $40 million, and he had 2 absolutely terrible options. Option A, put all his money into one company and let the other one die for sure. Or option B, split the money between them and risk both companies failing completely.
And his reason for risking it all? It wasn't a business calculation, it was pure emotion. He didn't see them as assets on a spreadsheet, he literally compared them to his children. He just couldn't choose which one to let starve to death. So he split the money, knowing he could lose everything. And incredibly, they both survived.
So what on earth drives a person to make these kinds of impossible bets? Well, it goes way beyond just business. It's about the deep down why behind all the struggle.
Musk often frames his motivation by asking us to imagine 2 different futures for humanity. In one future, we're stuck here on Earth forever, just waiting for some extinction-level event to eventually wipe us out. But in the other future, we're out there, a multi-planetary species, exploring the stars. He says that second one is just fundamentally more exciting and inspiring.
And for him, this is the whole point. It's not just about survival, it's about inspiration. He believes life can't just be a miserable grind of solving one problem after another. There has to be some grand adventure that makes you genuinely excited to get up in the morning. And for him, that multiplanetary future, that's it.
But look, having a huge, inspiring vision is one thing. Actually trying to build it? Well, that requires an almost unbelievable amount of work. And that brings us to our final piece of the puzzle, the price of progress.
This work ethic goes way back. When he and his brother started their very first company, they couldn't afford an apartment. So they rented a tiny little office, slept on the couch, showered at the YMCA, and they had one computer. One. So his brother would run the website during the day and he would code all night, 7 days a week.
He calls this working every waking hour. And the biggest lesson he says he learned from that whole experience is that you simply cannot sustain that level of intensity. It's just not humanly possible unless you are deeply, truly passionate about what you're doing. Passion isn't a bonus, it's a requirement.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Here's a quick toolkit from the Musk mindset. 1. Acknowledge your fear, but act anyway. 2. If something is truly important, you have to try, even if you'll probably fail. 3. Find a mission that's about more than just solving problems. Find something that inspires you. 4. Understand that passion is the only fuel for that kind of insane effort. And finally, his advice, especially for young people, is that right now is the time to take risks and do something bold.
And that really brings this all back to you. I mean, you don't have to build a rocket company to use this mindset. It's really about asking yourself, what's that one important thing that's worth trying, even if failure is staring you in the face? What's the one bold risk you won't regret taking?